Esteemed guests, buenas tardes and welcome to the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce Monday Luncheon, pulling together the importance of racial equity in the Hispanic and minority communities for our national economic growth. To begin our program, a message from our signature sponsor, Wells Fargo. Honored guests, please welcome, representing our signature sponsor, Wells Fargo, the Supplier Diversity Manager, Salvador Enriquez.
Muy buenas tardes. My name is Salvador Enriquez, and I'm a Supplier Diversity Manager at Wells Fargo. First, thank you to the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and its leadership for inviting me to provide remark at today's plenary luncheon. What a great title for a luncheon. Pulling together the importance of racial equity in the Hispanic and minority communities for our national economic growth. At Wells Fargo, we have been serving the Hispanic community for 170 years. When Wells Fargo opened for business in California in 1852, it offered in-language services and hired Spanish-speaking team members to meet the needs of its customers. Today, 1 in 5 employees at Wells Fargo is of Hispanic or Latino descent, and that number is only getting bigger. Earlier in the month, Wells Fargo's Corporate Economics Group published a special report on the role the Latino community is going to play in the recovery of the American economy. The report concludes that all of you are the special sauce that will ensure that the United States will continue to be the largest economy in the world. Over the past decade, Hispanic Americans have been the primary driver of labor force growth, registered above average income gains, and accounted for a growing share of spending. Recent trends suggest Hispanics will exert an even greater influence on economic growth over the coming decade. Compared to the broader population, the U.S. Hispanic population is significantly younger and faster growing, while at the same time becoming increasingly educated. We've known this for a while. Our time is now. Y como no quiero que se les enfríen las tortillas, los frijoles y el arroz, I say to you, buen provecho, hasta la próxima y gracias.
The coronavirus pandemic took a heavy toll on our community, leaving many people without jobs. Businesses and families struggled financially during already difficult times. As part of our community commitment, Telemundo responded and took action. On April 1, 2020, together with the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, we launched Nuestros Negocios, a nationwide campaign with a simple mission: to help Hispanic-owned small businesses overcome this unprecedented crisis caused by the pandemic.
¿Qué es lo que primero nos recomiendas?
Our integrated campaign leveraged Telemundo's multi-platform portfolio to reach our community across every touchpoint through innovative content experiences.
Necesitamos proteger el negocio.
We connected businesses with experts, offered dedicated news, articles, and digital resources, and provided our platforms and programs to help promote their services for them to remain in business. The engagement received solidified the true need for Spanish language information and advice within our Hispanic small business community. Since launch, Nuestros Negocios content has received nearly 4 million views across Telemundo's social and digital platforms, with our live expert webinars making up 1.5 million of those views. Additionally, Nuestros Negocios has provided bilingual technical assistance to more than 11,000 small business owners and has connected more than 1,000 businesses to forgivable loans. As the leading Spanish language network in the U.S., we are proud to stand with the 4.7 million Hispanic businesses as they emerge from the pandemic. They are the economic future of America and continue to show that together, we are unstoppable.
And now, a message from our corporate sponsor, NBC Universal Telemundo Enterprises, from Senior Vice President and Head of Corporate and External Affairs, Christina Kolbjornsen.
On behalf of Telemundo and my colleagues at Comcast and NBC Universal, we are elated to join the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce National Conference once again. Come with us, NBC Universal Telemundo's Hispanic Heritage Month campaign celebrates the achievements of our Latino community and the progress that is to come, thanks in large part to the work you do. Our celebration would not be complete without highlighting Hispanic entrepreneurs and small businesses. They are the backbone of the U.S. economy, growing twice as fast as any other business in the country and contributing thousands of new jobs to their local communities. Through partnerships like Nuestros Negocios, launched alongside the USHCC in 2019, Telemundo uplifts small and medium-sized businesses year-round. To our friends at USHCC, we appreciate your ongoing leadership and partnership and are grateful for our shared mission. Happy Hispanic Heritage Month, everyone.
Estimados colegas and honored guests, welcome the President and CEO of the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Ramiro Cavazos.
Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. Welcome to Las Vegas. Let's give Peter Guzman a big round of applause. Peter, stand up. Peter, you're out of control. Thank you all for joining us. There is momentum in the air. We have over 1,000 registrants. Just a month ago, our chairwoman and I, Alice Rodriguez, and our board of directors were like, and the staff, what do you think? Maybe 400, 500? I said, I think 500, Alice. And Alice said, what if we get a few more? She goes, I think we're going to get 1,000. Well, we'll plan for that, Alice. But you know, it's COVID and, you know, everybody's being safe and careful. Over 1,000 registrants. Thank you. And we have thousands more online right now. So this is a virtual online platform and in person. Congratulations to each of you. Please join me at this time in thanking our board of directors, if they could stand, for their leadership and their powerful work on behalf of our board of directors. Thank you. Thank you so much. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you all for your stewardship. Want to thank all of our sponsors, our staff for their great work, our team. I am just completely over the moon with the success that we've seen already. Is everybody having a good time? Excellent. Excellent. Well, it's my honor to step in for Carlos Becerra from Toyota. He was going to introduce our next speaker, who will be calling in virtually, and Carlos Becerra is the head of our finance committee. He has a meeting with the CEO of Toyota, so he has asked me to step in. And at this time, I'd like to introduce a friend of mine who worked now in two different presidential administrations. He's an Afro-Latino. His mother is Cubana, and he's an example of the 65 million plus powerful network of not just political leaders and business leaders in this nation. Don Graves is the 19th Deputy Secretary of State. Most recently, Don served as a counselor to President Joe Biden during the 2020 presidential campaign. Prior to that, Graves served as Executive Vice President and Head of Corporate Responsibility at Key Bank. During the Obama administration, he was the head of economic policy for the administration. He was previously appointed by President Barack Obama as the executive director of the President's Council on Jobs and Competitiveness. He also was a deputy assistant secretary for small business community development at the U.S. Department of the Treasury. He has been a good friend to us. We work closely. He obviously works with Secretary Gina Raimundo and he is also the U.S. Federal Representative to the G7 Task Force on Social Impact Investment. Don has served on the board of directors of Metro Health Foundation, the FDIC's Advisory Committee on Economic Inclusion, and the trustees of the Community Reinvestment Fund. He's a fellow of the National Association of Public Administration, and Mr. Graves, Secretary Graves, has a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and History from Williams College and a Doctor of Jurisprudence, Raul, from Georgetown University. It is my honor and privilege to introduce to you our next speaker, the Deputy Secretary of Commerce, Don Graves.
Ramiro, gracias. Thank you, my friend. It is wonderful to be here. Hello, everyone, and happy Hispanic Heritage Month. I am so sorry that I can't be with you in person, but it's really great to be with you today and to be with the Chamber for your legislative summit. We all know how devastating the pandemic has been on the lives and livelihoods of so many Americans, especially to Hispanic-owned businesses and families. Hispanic and Latino workers were disproportionately impacted across the hardest hit industries, from agriculture to transportation and health services. In fact, Latino workers have faced the largest employment loss in the COVID recession compared to any other group. Women weren't spared either. In December, Hispanic or Latina women alone accounted for 45% of job losses among women. Even today, the Latino employment level is still more than 7% below its pre-pandemic level, compared with 5.7% for whites. On the health front, Hispanics and Latinos have been almost 2 times more likely to contract COVID and 4 times more likely to be hospitalized from COVID than their white counterparts. These disproportionate impacts on the Hispanic and Latino communities stem from deep-rooted structural, racial, and systemic inequalities in our nation's public health, economy, and society. This isn't anything that you don't know. The typical white family has 8 times the wealth of the typical Black family and 5 times the wealth of the typical Hispanic family. And there's still a huge gap in business ownership, home ownership, retirement accounts, and liquid savings between Black and Hispanic households relative to white households. These trends are unacceptable and they're un-American. Equity is a top priority for President Biden and for the Commerce Department. Our administration is committed to closing the racial wealth gap, dismantling federal barriers, and creating policies that uplift and invest in Black and Latino communities. It's not just the right thing to do, it's also good for our economy. According to our own US Census Bureau, the Hispanic market is the largest minority market in the US, and it's expanding rapidly. The group's spending power grew to $1.9 trillion in 2020, an increase of 87% from 2010. That's larger than the GDP of Italy. The number of Hispanic workers in the labor force is growing and projected to account for 78% of new workers between 2020 and 2030. Hispanics are also, as you know, filling more management jobs than ever, from 5.2% in 2000 to 10.7% now. It's also why the president has prioritized placing people of color, specifically Hispanics, in so many critically important positions within the administration. Because when policy is developed by people who have life experiences that reflect our communities, these policies better align with the needs and dreams of those who live in our communities. From Alejandra Castillo at EDA, Miguel Estienne at MBDA, the president's nominees for Census and the International Trade Administration, Rob Santos and Marisa Lago, as well as me and so many others throughout the department. Our efforts here at Commerce are putting the needs of this community at the forefront of all of our efforts. But it's not nearly enough. Eliminating the persistent racial wealth gap at the root is critical to providing equal opportunity for all Americans. And it's what I've done throughout my career, from working on civil rights and economic rights issues to working as the DAS for small business, community development, and housing policy. For more than 50 years, the Commerce Department has also championed some of those priorities. The Minority Business Development Agency, or MBDA, has supported minority firms by helping them access capital, contracts, and markets. And as part of the bipartisan infrastructure deal, the MBDA Act of 2021 will expand MBDA and strengthen its ability to support minority businesses, especially those in Hispanic and Latino communities. It'll increase access to private equity and venture capital funding for Hispanic and Latino entrepreneurs. It'll provide training and technical assistance to underrepresented groups in the emerging technology space. And it'll ensure that Hispanic and Latino workers can build wealth for their families sustainably and for the long term. We're headed in the right direction, but we all know that government can't solve all these challenges alone. That's why the Commerce Department is partnering with the private sector to make transformative investments in marginalized and underserved communities. And it's why this week I'm kicking off the Commerce Department's first Equity Council that includes leaders from all of our bureaus to ensure that we have a whole of department focus on supporting our communities. From the Economic Development Administration to the Minority Business Development Agency, the Patent and Trademark Office, the Census Bureau, the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the International Trade Administration, and so many other parts of the Department of Commerce, it's our priority to work with you to drive prosperity to our communities. It's public-private partnerships like ours that will generate good-paying jobs, resilient communities, and a more competitive American economy. Toward that aim, I'm looking forward to working together with all of you in the days ahead to eliminate barriers for Hispanics, Latinos, and other minorities in our community so that everyone has a fair shot to achieve the American dream. Thank you so much for giving me a few minutes, and I look forward to being with you again in person. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you, Mr. Graves, for joining us today. Esteemed guests, welcome USHCC Board Chair and Head of Community Impact, Managing Director for JP Morgan Chase, Alice Rodriguez.
All right. This is definitely a lively group, so I'm glad that everybody is enjoying their lunch and having a good time. So good afternoon, everyone. You know, the topic of racial equity and how it impacts our national economic growth is very near and dear to my heart because this is what I think about in my job every day. It's top of mind. And in October of last year, JP Morgan Chase made a very important commitment, $30 billion to advance racial equity. That's a lot of money, guys, $30 billion. Our commitment focuses on access to capital to help Black and Hispanic Latino consumers and entrepreneurs build wealth. The emphasis of the commitment is focused on home ownership, minority businesses, supplier diversity, and financial health. I have the honor of leading the community impact team that is tasked with ensuring that the commitment stays on track and gets done. My team and I do this with the help of many colleagues across the firm, especially Dr. Chris Sweet. Dr. Chris Sweet is the co-president of the JP Morgan Chase Institute. The JP Morgan Chase Institute is a think tank, and their goal is to help decision makers like myself use better facts, timely data, and thoughtful analysis to make sure our decisions are intact to advance global prosperity. The hope is that the insights can inform policymakers, business leaders, and others as they confront these challenges. Prior to joining JPMCI, he served as the director of analytics at a financial technology startup, where he led the development of advanced analytic algorithms. He was previously assistant professor at the MIT Sloan School of Management and at the Center for Urban Entrepreneurship and Economic Development at Rutgers Business School. As a faculty member, he taught and researched topics in strategy, entrepreneurship, global microfinance, economic sociology, and social network analysis. Way over my head is what I'm going to tell you right now. Chris earned a BSc in Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering from Princeton University and an MS in Computer Science from, are you paying attention, Victor, wherever you are? Stanford University. An MA in Sociology from Harvard University and a PhD in Organizational Behavior, also from Harvard. So, this guy's not messing around, and at JP Morgan Chase, trust me, a lot of people listen to him Please help me welcome Dr. Chris Wheat.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was a lovely, very kind introduction. I should always make sure that I only talk after Alice has spoken. So really wonderful to see my colleague there in person with you. Let me first say that I really wish that I could be there in person. It's sort of intimidating seeing myself on this giant screen in what is presumably a giant room. Yeah, just like that. So I really want to thank the organizing committee for inviting me to share just a few words on the research that we've done, looking in particular at the small business sector and what we see as some of the challenges for businesses, particularly those owned by people of color, and what the opportunities might look like as we hopefully turn the corner in the pandemic and see what the path forward is in terms of really taking advantage of all that the sector can offer. So if I could get the first slide or the very next slide. Great. For a couple of years, the JPMorgan Chase Institute has been following the mission that Alice introduced so well to try to use the anonymized data of the Chase customers to understand and inform policymakers about what we really think is happening in the US economy. And so we had been looking at small businesses and households to really understand the financial challenges that they were working through. And one of the things I always feel like I need to start by saying is that in general, small businesses are amazing, and the owners are, enthusiastic and committed to delivering these new ideas and products and services, but most of them are really quite small. And so what you can see here is on the left, a chart looking at the typical revenues for a small business over the first 5 years, broken out by the race of the owner. And while I'm usually showing this chart to help people understand some of those racial gaps, I think the very first thing it's important to call attention to is just the basic smallness of these small businesses. They are typically working with about $100,000 a year in revenue. It grows a little bit over those first few years, but not so much. On the right side, what you see is a measure of liquidity. We take the balances that we see in their accounts and look at how much they typically spend out of those accounts to get a sense of what sort of cash buffer they're working with. The typical business is working with 2 to 3 weeks of cash. And so that's really not a lot. And as I was saying, this is the state of the world before the pandemic even started. Notably and importantly, on this chart, you see Black and Hispanic-owned businesses much smaller, right? Much smaller in terms of both the revenue and in particular in terms of those cash buffers, that the money that they have to deal with something unexpected, say for instance, a pandemic when all of a sudden your customers aren't showing up. So going from 3 weeks down to 2 weeks of cash, really not very much. And you can only imagine what that probably has meant through the pandemic. So if you could go to the next slide, I can show you a little bit of what we've seen in terms of that. Lots of people, I think, have generally described what's been happening in the US economy in terms of the pandemic. And it's been sort of an interesting story, combining what's happened both in terms of the slowdown of the actual economy and some of the things that have happened as a result of the federal and government and local government, for that matter, stimulus, right? So what you see in this chart is on the bottom, you can see that perhaps expected at this point, a really sharp drop in revenues. And then you see for the typical small business, through the time that we were able to explore in this particular chart, basically through the end of 2020, revenues really never recover, right? They stay a few percentage points down from what they look like in the prior year. And again, that's kind of reflecting what I think people have an intuitive sense of small businesses not really seeing the customers that they had seen before. The two things that are a little bit interesting from this chart are that the expenses tend to track, right? So small businesses are, we love them because they're so resilient and they find a way to make a way, and the owners are going to make it work. One of the ways that they've done that is by cutting back their expenses. Does that mean that they are not necessarily paying their employees, their suppliers? We're not totally sure, but they're doing what they can to manage and make sure that they don't run out of cash. An interesting point you see on the top of this chart is that through the time that we had looked, balances were up. Some of that was federal program support targeting small businesses, particularly. Some of it was federal support targeting households. But even in cases that weren't the pandemic that we looked at in the past in terms of small businesses and disasters, we see business owners making what I think is a reasonable choice to kind of hold on to a little bit more cash until things become clear. So In this chart, I think you're seeing all of that. But again, just to give you a little color on what we think has been happening overall to those small businesses in the context that I showed you in the first slide, right? Where many of our Hispanic-owned businesses and in general businesses owned by people of color, we're coming from a place of being smaller and having a little bit less of a buffer to begin with. If you go to the next slide, I was just going to show like one of 2 points that I think is informative and maybe starting to show the kernel of something we can be optimistic about. So the concerning thing on this chart is the line sort of has that sharp drop in the middle and doesn't recover again. It looks something like what you saw before. In-person sales, and this is not at small businesses, this is for all businesses that we've seen in the retail and services space, stayed down for a very, very long time. So as far as we've seen our data, we still haven't seen recovery in terms of in-person sales, but we've seen this dramatic recovery in terms of online. So we sort of think about this as the shift to online. Perhaps an opportunity for those small businesses that have been able to make that pivot, and perhaps a concern for those who haven't, that we see so much of the activity moving online. Another lens on this, moving to the last slide, is this chart with, so if we go to the next slide. Great. This is not JP Morgan Chase data, this is census data, but a phenomenon that I certainly wasn't paying attention to until it was brought to my attention was this really large spike of new businesses, even in 2020, many, many more new businesses than I think any of us expected to see. And that top line there is a number of businesses in what the census calls non-store retailers and what I think normal people call just online businesses, right? So again, tremendous growth, tremendous entrepreneurial activity around, wait, the world is changing around me, there's a new opportunity, and then just sort of a spotlight on the way that we maybe should consider supporting the sector as a whole, making sure that those businesses are able to make that pivot who haven't yet. So these were the data points I wanted to bring to this conversation, particularly given that so many businesses and people of color tend to be less supported, less resourced for this kind of transition, to draw attention to this opportunity. So again, I really wanted to thank the Chamber for the invite. You guys have been a great partner to the firm as a whole and certainly to the Institute. I very much look forward to continuing this conversation. And please, all of the research that we do is public. If you're interested in the work of the Institute, please reach out to us. You can find all of our work online. So thank you again and have a wonderful conference. Wish I could be with you in person.
Many thanks to all our guest speakers. Lunch will now be served. Enjoy this time with your colleagues and friends. And a virtual welcome, joining us from North Carolina, the Latin American Chamber of Commerce of Charlotte. We're glad you're here. We'll see you in a few minutes.
It feels good having someone on your side to care for, be there for life's twists and turns that it has in store. 'Cause it's the little moments where we show how much we care, and with so much to protect each day, a little goes a long way. Nationwide is on your side.
Make today a new you had it in you day. Make today a we need a bigger trophy case day. Make today a learning the basics day. Make today a finally going in on season tickets day. No matter the day, PNC has the financial tools and technology to help. PNC Bank. Make today the day.
Okay, class, did you know outer space is so big, we don't know where it starts or even where it ends? And in all of that, in all of the universe, the most complex thing ever discovered is the human brain.
AT&T keeps kids and teachers connected so the learning never stops.
Let's jump in. Now, who wants to look inside the brain?
Imagine, if you can, a seed. Within this seed lives a purpose. For Ford Motor Company, supplier diversity and inclusion is like the seed. Planted over 50 years ago was an idea that supplier diversity purchases could not only transform the automotive industry, but could create a circular ecosystem of roots and branches that strengthen economy, social mobility, representation, and community. What we couldn't predict was how mighty this tree would become. Over $20 billion in GDP impact, 140,000 jobs in local businesses, $7.9 billion in wages. And this is the power of the seed. Together we are driving a better tomorrow where diversity breeds innovation and people are our North Star.
Why am I here? I want to be the first.
For my mom.
For an end to HIV.
A new treatment for cancer.
A breakthrough for Alzheimer's.
As longtime supporters of the USHCC, Comerica is proud to serve as a sponsor of this year's conference. Diversity is an important part of Comerica's culture, and that commitment is reflected across all markets, business lines, and operations. Our work to engage Hispanic communities across our markets is a testament to that commitment. We strive to empower Hispanic business owners to support their success. We have been a longtime supporter of Hispanic business enterprises who are the fastest growing segment in this country, and we have hosted bilingual business sense boot camps to provide guidance and support to Hispanic businesses struggling during the pandemic. Last year, Comerica supported COVID-19 relief efforts by partnering with local nonprofits, technical assistance providers, and CDFIs to provide capacity building, access to capital, and personal protective equipment distribution. We know that by building strong partnerships, Comerica too will grow stronger. Our efforts with the support of our Hispanic business resource groups have allowed Comerica colleagues to build meaningful relationships within our communities. The support we provide to Hispanic businesses and all our diverse communities is part of Comerica's promise of raising expectations of what a bank can be.
Friends and colleagues, we hope you enjoyed your lunch. And before we continue our program, we'd like to take a moment to salute the chefs and waitstaff here at the Mandalay Bay. We're grateful for their excellent work and warm welcome. Let's show our gratitude with a hearty round of applause. And now to continue our program, welcome, representing our sponsor, MasterCard, the Vice President of Community Relations and Public Policy, Mercedes Garcia.
Buenas tardes. Good afternoon, everybody. Very excited to be here and live, the most important part. So MasterCard is kind of the new kid in the block because we started this year our partnership and support to the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. We definitely applaud the amazing contributions they're doing to small businesses as well as to our community, and we share their mission in many, many ways. So this overall crisis has devastated millions of small businesses which are struggling to stay afloat and also to support their employees through these tough, very difficult times. So at MasterCard, we're doing our part as well by leveraging our network, our technology, our insights, and our partnerships to deliver the resources they need to sustain their businesses and to quickly adapt to a new way of operating and also to evolve customer needs. So things have changed a lot, right? So we recently committed $250 million to help with cybersecurity insights and support, as well as local market intelligence solutions at no cost to them. And additionally, within the set of curated solution resources that we have, we launched the MasterCard Digital Doors program to help them establish a digital presence and also to ensure that they are ready and strong to do business online. I'm sure you would agree that many individuals and businesses learned the hard way while being locked at home during the pandemic because they couldn't sell their goods and services, or people couldn't pay their bills or buy things they needed if they didn't have technology, if they didn't have payment cards or a bank account. So today, more than ever, payments technology and technology overall is really, really important. So we are making sure to be there. And we continue bringing our Master Your Card financial education program, and come visit us at the booth so you hear more about how we are supporting with education individuals and small businesses. Thank you so much for the opportunity to join efforts with all of you to do our part together and support so much needed that we have to definitely focus on this. So thank you for letting us be part of this.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. We now present our program's first panel discussion, Economics and Demographics of America's Latino Future. Welcome our moderator, the Executive Vice President of Vision IT, Christine Rice.
Got to be prepared with this new mask. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be your moderator this afternoon. My name's Christine Rice, and I'm the Executive Vice President of Vision IT. Vision IT is an IT services organization. We are a global provider of IT services around the globe in 17 countries, 17,000 employees. And I'm proud to be Hispanic. I'm proud to be a board member of the USHCC, making an impact and meeting all new friends and seeing some old friends. It is a pleasure to be here face to face. We have a great team to introduce you to, a panel of three with a really great variety of experience. I'd like to first bring out Carolina Janicelli. She leads the Community Impact Team of JPMC. Carolina? Carolina, I know JPMC is doing a lot of great things, and I know you have been in the industry for quite some time, and if you would, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I am thrilled to be here, and shout out to Ramiro. In addition to our shared Latino heritage, we have the same boss. Because I work for Alice Rodriguez at JP Morgan Chase in the Community Impact Team. I have been at the firm for over 25 years, really focused on the capital markets and helping clients get access to capital. And as we will discuss today, what better way to take all those learnings and apply them towards reducing the racial wealth gap in our country, focusing on Black and Latino home buyers, entrepreneurs. So great opportunity to share some of what we're doing with all of you today.
Thank you, Carolina. Next, I'd like to introduce you to Arturo Carrez. He is the CEO of Latino Business Action Network, ALBAN, which many of you know. Arturo. Arturo, if you could please introduce yourself.
Sure. Well, thanks, everyone, and thanks to the USHCC for the invitation. My name is Arturo Cáceres. I'm the CEO of Latino Business Action Network. So I'll talk a little bit about that in terms of like what we do, but we partner with Stanford to do quite a lot to try to transform the landscape for Latino entrepreneurship. But what we're trying to do essentially is take the best out of Stanford Graduate School of Business and push it out to the Latino opportunity. There's unfortunately not as many Latinos that there should be at Stanford, so we're taking the research and that education from the Graduate School of Business and making it available to as many Latinos as possible. We do that by doing annual research through Stanford. We have 2 researchers at Stanford that are part of our team, and then we produce an annual report every year on the state of Latino entrepreneurship across the country. The other thing that we do is have an education scaling program where we bring a cohort of 80 Latino, Latina business owners to Stanford, and we teach them about how to grow their business, and we complement that with mentorship and a lot of other activities to get them to scale their businesses. And the final thing is we have this ecosystem that we're building of the 800 graduates of our program. A few of you are here, I think.
Yes.
Maybe a little shout out to all the Alban alumni. And we're always looking for more, so if you're a Latina or Latino business owner and are interested in joining our familia, we would welcome you to apply to the program. And we're then, with this ecosystem, trying to continue to build relationships with capital providers as well as mentors to make sure that this group continues to scale their businesses. We think this is crucial for the Latino opportunity to be realized, and we're going to do everything possible from our vantage point. I do want to say that we partner with a lot of different organizations. I won't be able to name all of them, but the USHCC is one of our strategic partners. We're actually doing quite a lot with them, and if you are part of a chamber, that's absolutely great for us. Our data will show that that's one of the ways for you to grow your business is to get associated with these professional chambers and different types of chambers. And this is particularly important for Latino and Latina business owners, more so than others. These types of organizations are crucial. So we are very appreciative of this opportunity that the USHCC has given us, and we look forward to partnering with a lot more of you.
Thank you, Arturo. And last but not least, we have with us Jen Manuel Crosted. He is the senior writer and editor focused on Hispanic trends at Pew Research.
Hola, buenas tardes. It is my pleasure to be there, even if it is remotely. As you mentioned, I'm a senior writer and editor at the Pew Research Center, a nonpartisan, non-advocacy fact tank in Washington, D.C. And for many years, I've researched Latino demography and Hispanic public opinion at the center. I've analyzed trends related to employment, where Hispanics live, level of immigration to the U.S. from Latin America, trends in age, language use, views Latinos hold on current events, and views on Hispanic identity as well. So I've researched a variety of topics at the center. Most recently, I was a lead author and researcher on a report about the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on Hispanics in the U.S., both economically and otherwise. This was based on results from our bilingual national survey of Latinos, which is a survey we've been conducting for nearly 2 decades.
Excellent. Thank you, Jens. Well, as you can see, we have an outstanding panel for you this afternoon, one that brings a blend of professional experience, and we've heard a lot of trends throughout the last couple days, but they are really important trends. Specifically within my technology industry, we're seeing the more and more opportunity. At Vision IT, we're seeing more project opportunities, and I feel that that brings more opportunities for our IT Hispanics to be able to gain access to some of these large projects that we're doing for many customers that are here today. And so we'll talk a little bit about the population and job growth and opportunity. So without further ado, let's get started. And Carolina, I'd like to start with you. You know, as we know, the data shows Hispanics face wealth inequity. Average wealth has increased over the past 50 years, but has not grown equally among all groups. Hispanics face low-income challenges. We know that we see unbanked businesses, underbanked businesses in the Hispanic community. These situations do not allow for sustainability within families and do not create wealth for long-term growth. And so what are you seeing as some of the barriers to creating wealth for Hispanics, and what is JPMC doing to bridge that gap?
I'm going to start us off by sharing some statistics that put this in stark relief. We make up, as you all know, 19% of the population in this country, yet we only garner 8% of total wages and only hold 3% of the total wealth in this country. In addition to that, over 50% of Latino Hispanics in the United States are rent burdened. That means that they're paying between 30 or over 50% of their income every month just to put a roof over their heads. When you are house burdened, when you are rent burdened, it's very difficult to cover essential needs like education for your children, food, your basic needs, invest in your education, and also save. And if you don't save, then it's more difficult to embark on some of the other wealth-creating activities, such as buying a home.
Right.
So when JP Morgan Chase decided to address the key drivers of the racial wealth gap, we stepped back and looked at all the components of that wealth creation cycle and realized that systemically, access to affordable housing is actually one of the greatest derailers of financial health and wealth creation. So of our $30 billion commitment, $26 billion, or 87%, is actually focused on addressing the acute affordable housing crisis we face in this country. And we're looking at that both from the supply side, meaning the available stock of affordable homes. So 14 billion of our 30 billion is focused on the preservation and construction of affordable homes. And 12 billion is focused on the demand side, which is making access to a mortgage, to a home loan, more accessible to Black and Latino home buyers. Of course, we're also looking at the other key component of wealth creation in this country, which is your ability to start and sustain and grow your own business. So of our $30 billion, $2.75 billion is focused on supporting small business owners grow their business by lending an incremental $2 billion, equivalent to 15,000 incremental new small business loans to Black and Latino business owners over 5 years, and increasing our spend towards Black and Latino suppliers by $750 million incrementally over 5 years. And my dear colleague, Barbara, who's actually gonna come up here in a little while, she will tell you a lot more about what we're doing on the supplier diversity front.
That's great. I think that deserves a hand. That's fantastic. That's a start of something great that we know will impact our community. Thank you for sharing that. Please continue.
Oh, absolutely. No, the other thing I was just going to add is that the cornerstone of all of this is financial health. So going back to your sort of tee-up question about some of the systemic barriers, one of the things we've learned is that access to resources, information, guidance about financial health is a pretty big impediment for Latinos to achieve financial stability. One thing that is, so simple and yet so true is that having a well-managed checking account can open doors in this country, because a well-managed checking account is the foundation of your credit score. And if you pay your bills and you have a well-managed checking account, you can build a credit score that can then lend to to access to capital. So a big part of our commitment is actually to hire over 250 individuals. These are brand new roles across our consumer bank, whose sole focus is to do proactive community outreach to provide access and guidance to resources around financial health, and to integrate more of our Latino brothers and sisters into our banking system, because roughly on average, between 15 and 20% of Latinos are unbanked or underbanked. And we need to get to them as well to get them into the wealth creation cycle.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. You can't imagine at this day and age that people don't have a bank, but it is true that many people don't, and we need to, again, continue to bridge that gap, and you're doing some great things at JPMC, so thank you for that. Arturo, with the collaboration your organization has with Stanford, we know that there's a lot of data around Latino businesses and the importance of helping these businesses scale, which will significantly impact our U.S. economy. And what specific data points can you share that indicate that Latinos are transforming their businesses, and what can we do as business leaders here to help foster that continued growth?
Sure, that's a great question. My first caveat that I'll begin with is that I'm not a data scientist, but as I mentioned, we do have 2 PhD researchers on our staff who crunch through all the numbers. Actually, the lead researcher is Marlene Orozco, who's been with us for a few years, and she probably is the global expert on this topic. But every year we produce a report, and that report gets published at Stanford University at the Graduate School of Business. This next year's report will come out in January, and it's online as well, but if you can make it out to Stanford, it would be great. It's always a great event. The dean of the business school and quite a few others are there. And that's where we share a lot of these findings. But just at a high level, I think it has been mentioned that Latinos today already in the US, we represent an economy of $2.7 trillion. Just to put that in perspective, I mean, it's kind of hard for us to imagine what is $1 trillion, but there are only 6 or 7 countries on the planet that have an economy bigger than US Latinos. That's today. And as you heard the statistics, we're still on the way up, meaning that we are still generally a population that is coming from a lower level, and we're in the process of ascending. So you can only imagine the impact that that's going to have as both our population grows, but also as more and more of us go to college. And the numbers on education are also very impressive for Latinos. So while there are a lot of challenges, we do see already huge potential. The challenge for us is how to manifest that and how to really try to drive it. But some of the other statistics around that, over the last 10 years, of all the workforce growth in this country, Latinos accounted for between 60 and 80% of all of the workforce growth in the United States. Said differently, if it wasn't for Latinos, the US workforce would not be growing. In terms of new company formation, in the last 10 years, Latinos and Latinas accounted for just over half of all companies created in the last 10 years for the country. So, very impressive. That's crucial because creating companies and growing companies is one of the best ways to generate wealth. And it's also one of the best ways for intergenerational wealth formation, something that our community really needs. Also, if you're a Latina or Latino business owner, you're much more likely to hire other Latinos and to buy from other Latinos or Latinas. And so you're generating more wealth for all of our community. This is one of the best trends for closing that gap, is to really find a way to help these companies grow. The other challenges that we see with that, though, our research does show while these companies are smaller because they're newer, and they are growing faster, and if you compare like for like, meaning small company to small company and slightly larger company to slightly larger company, Latina firms have equivalent credit ratings, and they're growing faster, but yet they're still finding it harder to get financing, to find investment. So the 2 key areas that we see that will help make sure that these companies continue to grow is around access to capital as well as corporate contracts. Once you reach a certain size, in order to really scale the company, those are going to be very crucial. And those are two areas that we do think for Latino-owned companies are increasingly important. And we're trying to do as much as we can around that and partnering with everyone else to do that. I do want to mention that we publish this data and we make it available to all of our sponsors, to the public, to government officials. We meet with departments of Treasury. Because the other side of this equation, one of it is capacity building, where we want to help Latina and Latino companies come up to speed and to get all that know-how that maybe they didn't have, and also the connections, the introductions. But another aspect is then to deal with some of the structural biases or internal biases that institutions or corporations may have. And again, we work with these corporations, they're our partners, but we see the best of them like Chase and Wells Fargo and Bank of America and many others, Facebook, they're also examining internally their own processes to see what they can do to make sure that they're rooting out any kind of bias. Because at the end of the day, this is also the right thing to do, right? To create a level playing field for everyone is going to motivate a lot more from everyone. And we need everyone engaged in this effort. And so we try to work as strongly as we can with all of our partners on both sides of this to get the facts out there so that they can look at ways to improve. You know, whether it's a supplier diversity program to make sure that there's real metrics, that you're figuring out how are you really reaching people and evaluating these companies in a fair process and making sure that you are achieving the goals that you want. We're not telling people what goals they should have. We're just trying to facilitate that whole process by providing data and facts, and then also we participate to try to be good business partners with them to get this capacity building out there. And again, we do that through this scaling program that we have, but then also through this ecosystem development, where we're always constantly looking for more business partners that want to help us try to move this ball forward. And we're always looking for more, so if you're a corporation out there, or you're any kind of a foundation or institution, and you think you're interested in the work that we're doing, we would welcome anyone to come and talk to us, and we're very easy to work with, and we are really trying to work in a constructive way with everyone. This opportunity for Latinos, if I could close my comments, if the only thing we achieve is for the Latino and Latina-owned companies to reach the average size, again, our companies are newer, and so our companies tend to be smaller, but they are growing faster. At every stage, they're growing faster. But they do start to reach this challenging point after $1 million where access to capital and access to corporate contracts starts to really hurt them. If what we achieve in this room with all of the partners around the country that are working on this is that these companies, these Latina and Latino-owned companies, reach the same size as the average size of a company in the US. No bigger, just the average. That would be an extra $1.4 trillion for the US economy. By 2030, only 9 years from now, that Latino opportunity gap for our country will be $3.3 trillion. There's nothing bigger than this for our country. This is fundamental for everyone, whether you're Latino or not. Mm-hmm. This is a huge opportunity for the country.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Arturo, for the great work that you're doing. I know many participants in your organization in LBAN have come out with an unbelievable difference in what you're doing to help grow their business and really change their mindset about how they go after business. You know, a few things that you talked about are key as far as hiring Latinos and helping other businesses. You know, we talk about that a lot, is how do we help each other? And in fact, we talk about that on the board, and making sure that we are looking at our procurement opportunities, even as a chamber. But also, I ask that all the corporates out there and the HBEs look at how do we help each other, because if we do that, we know that we will continue to move that ball forward, like you talked about, Arturo. And in corporate contracts, I mean, that's what we're here at this conference, is to understand where are the needs, where do the HBEs help fill that gap. We need to change that mindset, because that mindset often is HBEs are small, they don't have capacity, they can't do it. No, we can, we will, and we are going and moving that ball forward. And so it's with great people like you and great individuals that are out there that can make that difference. So thank you. So Jen, sorry to make you last. We haven't forgotten about you, because you have some great data to share. You know, as I was researching for this panel, I learned that, you know, of course, the population for Latinos continues to grow, but an interesting statistic is that 1 million Latinos will turn 18 years old every year for the next 20 years. Can you believe that? So, very exciting, a huge stream of Latinos coming of age in this country. And what does that bring? Great opportunities. And so, Jens, what role do you feel that Latino youth play in the U.S. economic growth?
Thank you. That's a great question. Latino youth, or youth in the Latino population, more so than with other racial and ethnic groups, they play a large role. The median age of U.S., and a lot of it has to do with the growth of U.S.-born Latinos. There are more than 62 million Hispanics in the country today, and Hispanics are now nearly 1 in every 5 people in the country. Population growth today isn't quite as much as it was in the 90s, and this can be partly explained by looking at why the population is growing. In the 90s, the population grew mostly due to immigration. Today, Hispanic newborns are driving growth. Over the past decade, for every nearly 3 Hispanic newborns, there was about 1 new Hispanic immigrant. And that gives you a sense of the youth of the population. The median age for US-born Latinos is about 20 years old. It's twice that, over 40 for Latino immigrants, and the overall US median age is closer to 40 years old. So US-born Latinos in particular are driving growth. They're quite young, and this has implications for other demographic characteristics. US-born Latinos, compared to Latino immigrants, have higher educational attainment. They're more likely to speak English, and they're on track to have a higher median household income, greater wealth. And this growth is projected to continue, this growth that's driven by US-born Latinos. For example, just in the past decade, Hispanics accounted for about half, or 51%, of the nation's population increase, and this was by far larger than any other group.
That's really exciting, and we are starting to see, you know, more and more young youth come into the business world, and very innovative businesses as well. Has Pew done any research with regard to the types of businesses? I know we saw JPMC talk about the list of different types of industries. What have you learned with regard to that?
Well, we've looked at some of the businesses Latinos are in. Most recently, we looked at representation in STEM fields, and Latinos are about 17% of everyone employed in the U.S., but there are only 8% of those employed in STEM jobs. Interestingly, Hispanics are 16% of those employed in a particular type of job, biological technician jobs. That's an example of where Latinos are roughly represented compared to their overall population. And so biological technicians, what is that? That's a Census Bureau category, and it just refers to technicians who help biological and medical scientists conduct laboratory tests and experiments. And for more context on that, the median pay is about $46,000 per year. And so Latinos are underrepresented in STEM fields, but we do see that a lot of the job openings that we see are for college educated workers, and Latinos are increasingly college educated. In 2019, there were 3.6 million Latinos enrolled in college. And among all US college students, Latinos now make up 19% of those enrolled in college. That's several percentage points higher than 2010. So Latinos are making progress in college enrollment. That said, there is a gender gap among Latinos, as there is among Americans overall who are enrolled in college. In 2019, women made up a significantly higher share of Latino college students than men. It was 56% were Hispanic women or Latinas, and it was 44% were Hispanic men.
Excellent, thank you. I mean, very exciting, certainly the data that you're sharing. And so unfortunately, I am out of time, but I think, we learned today that there is a lot of excitement and a lot of positiveness being created with regard to our banking opportunities, with regard to business growth, connections, our youth. So let's just continue to make a difference. We all can make a difference starting here at this conference. Let's take these actions and these conversations to the next level, and let's make an impact. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks, Jens.
Mi nombre es Ruth Leonor Rico Cortés, mi compañía es Delicias Colombianas RR, que realmente cuando yo inicié acá no habían restaurantes colombianos y yo veía que había de otros países y yo decía, ¿por qué no de mi país? Entonces yo inicié vendiendo empanadas y poco a poco fue creciendo mi negocio. Inicié en tents, en festivales con carpas. También hacíamos caterings y normalmente íbamos muchos festivales, como 40 festivales. Llegamos a ir a Bonnaroo como 3 veces, que Bonnaroo es un evento súper grandísimo. Pedí mucho a Dios para poder comprar una food truck y hoy en día pues desde luego tenemos nuestra food truck y eso. Después de la pandemia pues realmente ni festivales, ni catering, ni llevar las arepas a las tiendas porque la gente no salía, no tenían trabajo ni nada, ¿cómo iban a comprar? Entonces yo dije, ok, ¿qué es lo que voy a hacer realmente? Porque nada de esto voy a hacer. Los ingresos perdí más o menos como el 80% de mis ingresos, entonces fue terrible. La Cámara Nashville Hispanic Chamber, con ellos he tenido una gran ayuda. Primero, ellos nos han dado demasiada información sobre los recursos que están dando el gobierno. Por intermedio de ellos, yo hice unas aplicaciones ahí para el PPP. En este momento tengo en espera otra aplicación que hice, que es para que los restaurantes vuelvan a respirar un poquito, pero está todavía en revisión. Para utilizar el PPP, la verdad son ciertas pautas que le dan el SBA para que uno no tenga que reintegrar ese dinero. Entonces, de acuerdo a las pautas que ellos nos daban, así mismo se invirtió el dinero. Hoy en día yo estoy muy comprometida con la Cámara de Comercio porque la verdad están dando unos cursos virtualmente. Ya llevamos como, creo que 69 charlas que se han dado virtualmente y se tratan diferentes temas de acuerdo al negocio y todo, y la verdad es muy favorable. Mucha gente le tocó cerrar el negocio, entonces la Cámara de Comercio en este momento precisamente está enfocado en eso, en poder ayudar a la persona o el negocio que necesite directamente. Por eso yo insisto todos los días, difundir esto porque yo sé que hoy en día la comida colombiana, según encuestas, es el número 1. Entonces la idea es esa, de que nuestra gastronomía colombiana se vea alrededor de todas las comunidades.
We continue our program with our next panel discussion, the role of corporations, governments, and foundations in uplifting Hispanic and minority entrepreneurs through procurement. Welcome our moderator, Head of Supplier Diversity for Mass Mutual, Regina Hayward.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here with you. How's everybody doing this afternoon? All right. Well, that sounds great. I am so excited to introduce you to our wonderful panelists this afternoon. Please welcome them. We're going to start with Barbara Dugas-Patterson of J.P. Morgan Chase & Company. Also, please join me in welcoming Brad Clark, the Gill Foundation. And Rhonda Davenport, Comerica Bank. Let's give it up for our panelists this afternoon. So, as we've listened to the conversation during the USHCC conference, we've heard about the growth in Hispanic-owned businesses across the country and across the globe. A pressing question that I think we all have is, what is procurement's role in helping to advance Hispanic-owned businesses? And what are the resources that are available for HBEs to ensure that their businesses can grow and scale? And so today, we're going to tackle those very tough questions head on, and you're going to learn from organizations who are leading in this effort. Let's start with Rhonda. Rhonda, in your role, you are responsible for a large portfolio of retail banking centers. Can you tell us a bit more about your role at Comerica and how Comerica is contributing to the effort within the Hispanic community?
Glad to be here with you all today. Regina, I'm Executive Vice President, National Director for Retail and Small Business Banking for Comerica. And we recently became corporate partners and partnering now here with the Chamber, so very excited to be with everyone today. Let me start out by saying, though, that our diversity statement consciously includes the following. We stand for social justice and racial equality for all communities and against policies and actions that create inequalities within our communities. This statement helps govern our actions and how we develop business strategies in all cases, especially in areas of business finance. So, what I'd like to spend some time, would you like me to go into?
Sure.
Okay, all right. First, we work on our workforce and build a workforce that represents our business communities. Comerica recently received a 5-star recognition in the Corporate Inclusion Index from the Hispanic Association on Corporate Responsibility. Another example is Comerica's Mejente Employee Resource Group. In September, we launched a 6-part series, educational sessions, throughout all markets celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, broadening awareness of the Hispanic community. And finally, regarding workforce, our Hispanic population at Comerica has grown over 10% in the last 5 years, and 36% of that is at the senior officer level, which is the highest growth for any ethnic group in the company. A second area that's important in driving racial equality, especially in the business communities, is capital and providing access to capital in the Hispanic community. We have Hispanic business resource groups, and we partner with Hispanic business leaders in all of our markets. These teams have developed over $34 million in business to Comerica, and it serves as a critical outreach initiative for our Hispanic business community. Another example for Comerica is that we announced a $5 billion commitment in small business loan commitments, which will include loans made to HBEs. The third area, Regina, is education. And as part of our agenda is investing in financial education for underserved communities. So that with that, Comerica partners with diverse advocates such as Latina Style to provide educational business boot camps in our key markets to assist startups, small and medium-sized businesses in the Hispanic community. We've had over 20 boot camps that have been targeted towards Hispanic business owners. And another example of that is partnering with CDFIs, which we know is just an important part of the outreach that we do to provide critical resources that aid small businesses for their survival, recovery, and their viability, including technical assistance. We have two colleagues here today from our external affairs team that are also in attendance at this conference.
Wow.
And finally, just one other point I'd like to make. We add value by leveraging unique partnerships to support business success. Mm-hmm. An example is this partnership that we have with the Texas Rangers, and it's called the Comerica Call-Up Contest, where we aim to support women-owned and minority-owned businesses in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And we know that women and minority business have been so hit by the difficulties of the pandemic. And we continue to strive to look for just innovative, impactful ways to invest in the community. And so I'm excited to say that the winner of the pitch contest was Coco Andre Chocolatier, which is a Latina-owned business, and they were selected as the grand prize winner. They received, this mother and daughter will receive advertising partnership with the Rangers, and they will receive support on their social media channels, their radio, the Rangers radio, as well as being in the game program. And what's exciting is when I opened up our gift bag from the conference, I saw the chocolate from Coco Andre, sponsored by Nationwide, which I think is wonderful because it shows how it's all connected and related to how we are doing outreach to help business and support the Hispanic community.
Very good, Rhonda. Well, that is a comprehensive view of Comerica support, and we're so glad that you all are also supporting the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Let's give it up for Comerica. Wow, that's a broad base of work. So, Brad, as we think about your leadership role and the foundation's commitments to the Hispanic community, can you share a bit more about your background and also how you're partnering with chambers of commerce to make meaningful impact?
Yeah, you know, I work for a guy who was an early tech entrepreneur based in Denver, Colorado. He's invested about $500 million over the last 20 years to advance the lives of LGBT Americans. And I think really, folks often come to us and ask, you know, what is a secret sauce for LGBT community? How have you advanced so quickly in terms of rights and protections across the country? And I think a big piece of that secret sauce are the folks in this room. You know, it's no secret that corporate America has really led the way, perhaps even before our communities and certainly our government was ready for some of the advancements of these protections. You look, you know, my home state of Iowa, you know, when I would go in and advocate for further civil rights protections in the state, in addition to activists and parents and kids, we'd also bring corporate partners. So Principal Financial, Meredith Publishing, folks like that would go into these meetings with me to advocate for the protections. And I think they knew that it was the right thing to do. It was also good for their brand in terms of the market. And also it sent a message to their employees in terms of recruitment and retention of those employees. I think we saw the same thing happen on marriage. We've seen the same pushback from corporate partners in states like Indiana or North Carolina and now in Texas, where we see some of these attacks on LGBT folks. And so, you know, that's really what motivated us to get involved with various chambers, just recognizing the value of where corporations and businesses are at. So we started a partnership with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce several years ago and have now ventured into funding and helping support and building partnerships with various chambers.
Thank you so much for sharing, Brad. And as we get into the supplier diversity space, I have to say, as head of supplier diversity at MassMutual, I know how important it is to have leadership commitment to the effort, but also to think about areas like supplier diversity in non-traditional ways. So we know a lot about our first tier and our second tier spin, but really thinking about how we hold all suppliers accountable for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so as I come to Barbara, and I think about the commitment that JP Morgan Chase has made, just a significant commitment of $30 billion, can you share how your role and your leadership in both supplier diversity and workplace is helping to advance those commitments at JP Morgan Chase?
Well, first I'll say, and we heard both Carolina and Alice allude to our $30 billion commitment. That is a big number, right? So this is, and that's not to pat us on the back. I'm just thinking of all the work that is going into that and all the people across the firm that are involved in it. So when you think of that 30 billion, I'll do a quick breakdown for you. 14 billion is 100,000 new affordable home units. Another 12 billion in $60,000 single family loans, with 8 billion in new loans and 4 billion in refis, so that people in our communities, Black and Hispanic, have the ability to own ownership. Own homes, because that's such a way to build wealth, right? We've mentioned the $2 billion, 15,000 loan commitment for small businesses, so that's a big way. $50 million going to CDFIs and MDIs that are doing work in our communities, and another $1 million in helping people get low-cost savings and checking accounts. And then, of course, you come to our $750 million in commitment for the next 5 years with Hispanic and Black businesses. And we are thinking out of the box. Our supplier diversity team has been around for 27 years, and this is important to us, but we said to take this to another level, what it's going to take from us. And we are coordinating with our spend leaders across the firm. We've set targets with lines of business. We have reporting all the way to the top of the house, so we are holding ourselves accountable. We are working with small business and our other lines of business to proactively identify both Hispanic and Black businesses that would be a good match for us. We have picked 5 cities to focus on in supplier diversity: Chicago, LA, New York, Dallas, and Houston, because they have strong Black and Hispanic communities, and we want to leave a lasting legacy there. We're not limited to those cities, but we want to go deep, and we want to find the companies that are ready to do business with us now and find the opportunities. We're also, we want for the smallest of companies to partner with education resources in those cities and see how we can support that. So kind of create the whole ecosystem, both internally, where we're leveraging everyone's good ideas, and externally connecting with community partners.
So I like that ecosystem approach and the accountability, really holding yourself and your partners accountable for meaningful change. Brad, I want to circle back to you, because we've heard some powerful numbers during this conference. 4.65 million Hispanic-owned businesses, approaching 5 million in the country. 1.9 trillion in buying power. So when we think about equality, when you think about really getting to a spot in the United States where we can say that we're treating everybody the same, and we do have that focus on equity and fairness, what can Hispanic-owned businesses do to help address challenges and gaps that we still have within the country regarding equality?
Right. I think one of the issues that we've seen within LGBT movement is also to, I think we maybe need to lower the temperature and lower the volume a bit and give people some patience and grace through new vocabulary, new training modules, and recognizing that LGBT folks and other minority communities may be just working with each other to figure out the best way forward. You know, I think there are a lot of resources. We've been funding the U.S. Chamber as well as the Hispanic Chamber, to develop some of these resources that people can go online and get. But I think in our day-to-day lives, one of the things that I would encourage, I know we encourage our movement to do, is really just lower the temperature. I think the vast majority of people out there want to do the right thing and want to get to the right place. But it comes with an amount of patience and grace, and I know that we're experiencing that within our own communities. But there are a number of resources out there from the chambers of commerce, but I think the clear ones are things like non-discrimination policies as a clear benchmark, as well as some of the new employee benefits that we're seeing out there, especially from some of the major employers. Where we're seeing this most explicitly is around transgender protections, especially in healthcare, to make sure that LGBT folks, but most specifically transgender folks, have access to some of the benefits and the healthcare services that they need.
So the engagement and insights is really critical, and continuing to listen and have the conversation. I like what you mentioned about turning the temperature down and really looking for those opportunities to engage. Thank you. Rhonda, as we come back and think about this issue of racial equity, how is Comerica dealing with that issue, and what are some tangible actions that you all are taking to address racial equity?
Yeah, we have a holistic, comprehensive approach, and we do believe that accountability starts at the top. And our Kurt Farmer, our chairman, president, and CEO, he's an incredible leader, and he exemplifies everything who we are in this organization. But I just thought it was important to share a quote from him in respect to our commitment to diversity at Comerica. Diversity is a core value of Comerica. It's embedded in our business strategy. It's celebrated amongst our colleagues and extended to our community, our business partners. And embracing diversity and promoting inclusion makes Comerica stronger and allows us to better serve our customers. That's his leadership. And we have a structure within Comerica. We have an executive diversity committee that's chaired by him, our president, CEO. And they address key issues related to diversity, equity, inclusion. It includes the most senior leaders within the organization, and they address those important strategic issues related to diversity, equity, inclusion. They provide guidance to the Chief Diversity Officer, who leads our strategy development and executes on that strategy. And lastly, they set these long-term goals, and internal goals focused on 4 strategic areas: corporate governance, workforce diversity, social impact, awareness, and education. And finally, as senior officers, we're all accountable for a diversity scorecard in which the senior leaders in the company, we're held accountable to that. And our incentive, compensation, is tied to our success in achieving our diversity scorecard. So there's real teeth in this. And it's a qualitative measurement tool. We're held to the standard, and it ensures that we're driving the right behaviors, and all leaders are, and employees advance in the areas of workforce representation, increasing equity in employee succession plans, promoting mentorship, sponsorship for underrepresented groups, driving involvement for employees for increased business outreach to our diverse communities, such as this Hispanic community, promoting social impact and volunteerism, and expanding equity in minority suppliers through increased project and procurement inclusion. So certainly, Regina, we have room to improve, but we've got the structure in place, and we've got the accountability there. And with what we've put into practice, it is accelerating our performance.
Thank you, Rhonda. And I think what we're hearing across the board, organizations having that leadership commitment, really picking the places where the organization feels it can have the most impact, and then holding ourselves accountable for doing the work. Earlier this year, MassMutual announced a $150 million commitment to procure from underrepresented diverse businesses. But we also announced a commitment to grow and scale diverse-owned businesses. And we're standing up diverse business programs, outreach strategies, and really galvanizing the full team toward the outcomes that we want to see. And that is just a powerful way that corporations are moving this work forward. And with that, Barbara, I want to come back to JP Morgan and think about the goals that you all have set for Hispanic and Black-owned businesses over the next 5 years. How are you thinking out of the box? And how are your teams being pulled into the commitment that you've made?
Yep, so I think Arturo mentioned it on the last panel that companies are coming in, we're locking ourselves up in the room and saying, how can we do things differently? How can we do things better and be more impactful? And we've been doing that certainly at JP Morgan a lot. One of the big things that we've done is we've stopped, we're being proactive, not reactive, right? So we've created a procurement team or sourcing team that is focused on D&I. And so they're looking at what's coming out this year, next year, 3 years down the way, and they're saying, we're not going to wait for the RFP, and then it's only for really large companies. What can we carve off and give to a Black or Hispanic business today that hopefully allows them to grow and develop in 3 years? Another thing that we are doing is we've challenged our largest suppliers. So we're passionate and we're committed, and so we're going to our largest suppliers, 130 or so of them, and some of you are in the room, so you know it, and we're saying, what is your D&I? What's your D&I program? And we've looked at it, and for those that are just at the beginning, we're creating mentoring programs to help other companies create a supplier diversity program. If they're in the middle, we're challenging them to challenge themselves like we've challenged ourselves and set higher goals. If they are stellar, like some of these that were on the screen today, we're saying we are asking you to mentor the other two groups. So we are working together. This is not just about JP Morgan and us patting ourselves on the back, but us working with all the other companies that have the same values to really make an impact. And we're holding our leaders accountable. We have goals, and we are holding them to it at the very highest levels of the firm. And we're being proactive, just getting out there, holding events, holding activities, coming to organizations like the USHCC and saying, open your Rolodex to us. Who are the companies we should know? And being transparent about the kind of companies that we need.
So collaboration is a part of this. And for those who are new to the USHCC conference, it's one of the key benefits of connecting with this group, the insights and the collaboration that you have. So we have certainly an audience that's in the room, but we also have a virtual audience. And I want to make sure that we answer the question that I think HBEs have on their minds. So let's maybe address, what advice would you give to a Hispanic business owner who's sitting here today and wants to engage with your firm or with your organization? Let's just go down the row and see what we would share for our HBEs. And I'll start here, Barbara, with you.
Okay. Well, I think first understand what our needs are. I mean, we spend most of our money in technology, real estate, marketing, so it helps professional services to understand what a big bank like JP Morgan needs. We have cybersecurity requirements and things like that. So that's another thing we're doing, is we're helping companies to understand where their gaps may be and help them try to figure out funding to get to close those gaps. But really understanding what our needs are, and reach out to us. We have a website. We're looking at it every day. You can reach out to us. You can sign up in our portal, and we will get back to you. And we're going to be transparent. We don't want people or companies to feel, just hang there in a black hole. If you're not ready today, we'll be transparent and tell you what it would take to do business with us.
And Brad?
Yeah, I think we approach these issues as a rising tide lifts all boats, and we look at these issues as very interconnected in the intersectionality of LGBT issues and race and ethnicity. And looking at, in addition to our LGBT work nationwide, we go big in our home state of Colorado and fund things like STEM education in districts that are predominantly serving Black and Hispanic communities, trying to end predatory lending, which is impacting a number of communities, and also knowing that in the West we've seen a pretty significant rise in hate crimes in many of our states, and making sure that groups like ADL and various communities have the resources they need to combat that.
Very good. And Rhonda?
Right, thank you. What I would say, in addition to what Barbara shared
around understanding what the way that you can partner and get your business needs established. I'm in banking. Banking is very relational. Get to know your banker, right? It's more than a transaction. It's more than getting a loan. It's getting access to tools, resources, technical assistance. It's a complete package. And I just really encourage HBEs, business owners, that look at that banking relationship as a true partnership.
Thank you. And from the Mass Mutual perspective, please take advantage of the opportunity to get to know our teams. I'm excited that our head of procurement, Will Porter, is with us, as well as two of our resources from our procurement team, April Cimarelli and Amanda Hernandez. So we want to connect with you, and we certainly want to ensure that we are investing in your businesses being successful. And with that, please join me in thanking this great panel. And we will wrap it up. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Many thanks to all our panelists. This concludes our lunch program, and thank you for joining us. We'll see you right here tomorrow morning for our breakfast program, In Her Footsteps, Women in Business and Leadership.